Hello everyone and Happy New Year. I hope everybody has had a good 2025 so far. I thought maybe a good way to open up the new year would be to begin with a TBR jar. In my chocolate emporium container here, I have my 25 books from my TBR that I released in December. I will be drawing 3 of these with the intention to read at least 2 of them in the month of January. Our first pick A Master of Gin. I've got a good mix in my TBR of books I've already started, books I've not started, books that I would really like to read, and books that I would like to read less. That's one that I would like to read. Our second one The Hunger Games. I've been meaning to read it. I've been less excited because it makes me anxious, but I can do it. I believe. And then the final pick for the month of January TBR jar . Half a Soul. Yes! I've been really excited about Half a Soul. So, these are my 3 for the month of January. And of the 2 of them, of the 3, the 2 that I will probably read will be Half a Soul and A Master of Gin. The goal is that I read all of them, all 25 this year. But I'm a bit of a mood reader, so I wanted to give myself some freedom to kind of pick and choose as I am in the mood. Maybe I'll read all 3 if I read quickly enough. Who knows? I am currently on page 75 of Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. It is a fantasy novel that takes place in Regency, England. The main character, Dora, is cursed by a fairy who takes half her soul, which means that her emotions are kind of dampened. She doesn't feel things the way that she is expected to feel them. She feels like she's in a dreamlike state. She doesn't really feel fear or joy or love or she just feels like affection and irritation and mild annoyance, and this kind of causes her problems given the time in which she is living, where she is kind of expected to find a husband, though her aunt, who she lives with, has kind of given up on that at this point, and it's kind of accepted that she's going to be a spinster. So far in the story, Dora has gone to London with her cousin Vanessa and her aunt, and they're living with this countess. And the goal is for Vanessa to find a husband, since there's more available men in London. And Vanessa has been very interested in meeting the Lord Sorcier, Elias Wilder, or Elias Wilder. I've heard it both ways, Elias and Elias. She's very interested in meeting him because he is the court wizard. He's a magician for the King of England, and she's hoping that he can heal Dora's curse or fix her curse. And he's very intrigued because he's just very interested in the dealings of fairies. And I have a suspicion that he is actually, somewhat at least, fairy himself. Because we get little glimpses of iron burning him, and Dora wears these scissors as a potential weapon in case the fairy comes back for the other half of her soul. And he's like real nervous when he realizes they're there. And it's not like enemies to lovers at all. They're not enemies. But he's just kind of mean to everybody and kind of hates everybody. And everybody hates him because he's not like proper. So he's kind of already annoyed at Dora. But she doesn't really feel annoyance very much. So she kind of doesn't care and talks to him when she wants to talk to him. And then she'll be like, oh, you don't want to talk to me. And he's like, no, I don't. And he's really frustrated and thinks she's like stupid. I don't know. They're funny. I like Dora. I think she's an interesting main character. The book is, from what I can tell, 280 pages exactly. So it should be a fairly quick read for me. I go back to school next week. Hopefully that doesn't hurt my reading at all. I am currently on page 216 of Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, and I am absolutely obsessed with this book. It is currently like 1 a.m. right now, and I'm debating whether or not I should just finish it. I was going to wait until the morning to talk about what I had read and where I had gotten to so far, but like, they're in the fairy realm. There's like we're learning all about these plagues and all this magic stuff, and like the fairies are so frustrating to me, and all of this stuff, and like, so like there's like, it talks about like good versus evil and like the nature of man and stuff like that, but it's just so much fun. And I finished Half a Soul. I gave it 5 stars. Yeah, I thought it was so good. It was so cute. I loved it. I was having such a good time for the entire book. It was a quick little read, like 230 pages or something. And there's like a bit at the end that's like a snippet of a prequel novella or whatever. I loved it. It was so, I think about it all the time. I've recommended it to like several people. It's just so much fun. I loved it. It was a little Regency romance, and there were fairies, but they really weren't like a main plot point, honestly. Like, a fairy stole half her soul, but they're really only significant in the very last like 2 chapters. And it was a pretty cool thing. Like, I enjoyed it. I loved the romance. I loved the like little bits of drama. I did think she could have gone more in depth on the way that Dora was treated by her family, and we could have seen more of her interactions with the workhouses and the people in those workhouses. I did go back and forth on whether it was a 4 or a 5 star. I ended up giving it a 5 star just because I had such a good time. A lot of my ratings are, if I enjoyed it a lot, it's a 5 star, or if it's written really well, then I'll give it a higher rating. Usually I don't give it a 5-star for being well written unless I also liked it. But I thought it was well written. I liked the style of it. Overall, it was just a good read. It was a debut novel, so most people wouldn't have very high expectations. I just read to have fun. I read to enjoy it, and I did enjoy it. And that's what I'm looking for. Ignore that my room's like a mess. I am on page 149 of A Master of Jinn by P. Jelly Clark. That's the beginning of chapter 12. This book is about Fatma, who is part of the Ministry of Alchemy, Enchantments, and Supernatural Entities. It's like a division of like the government. She's sort of a police officer. I enjoy the magical elements of it. It ties in Islam in a way that really makes sense for the world. It takes place in Cairo, and it does a really good job of discussing the mythologies of Egypt throughout history and discussing groups of people who still follow these older gods. They're called idolaters because they're following what would be considered idols. But it also shows women wearing hijab, women not wearing hijab, women dressing very traditionally. The main character wears almost exclusively suits. She just likes them. It shows men wearing traditional clothing and others not. So I think it does a really interesting job of kind of modernizing this world, but also bringing in magical elements. There are jinn that just like hang out, I think. They're still considered kind of sacred. I don't know. It took me a while to understand really what was happening. There's still a lot of it that I don't understand. I am not very well versed in how Islam works or in like Egyptian culture, which is not a fault of the book. It is written really well, and it also talks about like classism and racism. Even in this world, the darker you are, the more you're prejudiced against. There's a lot of prejudice against idolaters who follow the old gods. There's rich people who can get away with just about anything, and the poor people live in slums and have next to nothing, which makes them more vulnerable. The story is 40 years ago, this guy called Al-Jahiz, sorry if I'm pronouncing things wrong, he came and he opened up the veil between our world and the magical world, which allows the world to function on magic and energies and all of these things. And then he disappeared. And this guy shows up and he says, I am Al-Jahiz returned. And the ministry is kind of like, well, we don't want some guy out there inciting riots and panic and causing all of these rebellions because that's like dangerous and stuff. And Fatma's like, we can't go out there with guns and kill people on accident trying to apprehend this guy. But nobody's really sure if he is actually Al-Jahiz or if he's an imposter. Nobody wants to believe that he's actually back. And he's like a threat to the government and stuff because he's powerful. She just wants to find out who he is. So he's come back, and literally his intention is to get the poor people to rise up and take over the government. Except they're like burning people alive and murdering people, and Fatma is not cool with murder. She's like, I get it. She totally agrees that these people deserve better and that the government should be doing better for them. But she doesn't agree with the murdering people to get that outcome. And so she just wants to find out who he is so that he'll stop killing people. But he wants a violent rebellion because he wants immediate change. And the poor people have nothing. So they don't have a reason not to rise up. The government hasn't done anything for them. So far, I think it's like a 3-star, like a good 3-star. It's like, it's good, it's fine. It's just not my favorite book ever so far. It is definitely an interesting story. Like, it's really interesting. It's really well done. And this world is like really well fleshed out and really well thought out. And it does interest me a lot. There's elements of queer romance. They're also like, they're not like together. They're just kind of like, they see each other and they just stare really deep into each other's eyes, and then they're like, okay. And they help each other out sometimes. It's not like it's very subtle, I think. Anybody who wasn't looking for it would just be like, oh, they're besties. I think I wasn't prepared for it to be a mystery. I was more interested in the fantasy elements and the like steampunk, the way that magic is kind of meshed with technology. But I feel like steampunk does a lot of mystery. It's kind of the vibes. I am on page 277 of A Master of Jinn. I'm hoping to finish the book tomorrow or the day after so that I can read The Hunger Games. That's the goal. There have been some twists that I have really enjoyed. The sapphic romance is no longer just implied. It's like explicit. It's right there. It's not like explicit, you know, but it's like, it's very plainly there. I'm actually kind of intrigued now. It's still not like my favorite book I've ever read, but I enjoy it. I'm having a good time, and I'm interested to see what happens next. I've been reading it very quickly. I don't really know how to describe it, honestly. It's just a good time. The characters are interesting to me. There's a lot of like lore and world building and just interesting history to me. I like the way that all of the like magical elements continue to be developed and we learn more about how they work, how the Jinn work, and about their like gods systems and magic systems. It just keeps like building on itself. So I finished A Master of Jinn, and so I gave it like 3.75 to a 4-star. Like, I thought it was good. It's not like one of my like favorite books I've ever read, but I did enjoy it, and I definitely think it's somebody's favorite book. I enjoyed that the main character was in a sapphic relationship and that it wasn't like the main plot. It was just like there. And when it was like talked about, it wasn't like a big deal. Like, it was just a thing that was happening. The magical elements were really, really interesting to me, and I really had a good time with that. I thought the ending was kind of funny, because it's like this whole big like battle, but then she's just like, no, stop it. And that's like it. Like, there are things in the plot that like it makes sense, but at the same time, I don't know. I feel like somebody might say like it was kind of a cop-out, but I thought it was fine. I thought it was good. And like plot-wise, it made sense. I did notice I'm not very critical of books. I do that with most media. I just read it or watch it. I just take it at face value. And I enjoy what's there, and I don't really think about what's not there or what could be there. So I don't really think about like writing style and like how could they improve this. And I'm taking a class where we talked about that and like what it means to read as a writer or whatever, and I was kind of like, that feels so boring. Like you're so preoccupied with what isn't there that it's hard to take in what is there. So I tend not to be very critical of books. I've tried to become a bit more aware of what I think and what's happening instead of just going along for the ride. But I noticed that this author, I think, doesn't do very much with the side characters. I've heard that be a topic with some other people where a lot of times side characters are there just to support the main character, and they don't have much of their own plot at all. I felt like CT, she had her own family, and like it was like a whole thing, but we really, even at the end when we find out more about her, we really don't, like, she's just kind of like, she's there, she's always just there when it's convenient, and that's explained away in the plot, but I don't know, it feels kind of weird. And Hadia has a cousin for every situation, which is like that's her joke. That's like, you have a lot of cousins, like, haha, you've got so many cousins. But she doesn't really have like her personality is very like, she's the religious one, she's a good person, and she's like everybody underestimates her because she's a woman and she's a hijabi, and so everybody like thinks that she's too like sensitive or whatever, and she's like, let me fight people, please, I can do it. And she can, but they don't go much into that. Honestly, we don't even know much about the main character. That may just be this guy's style of writing. He doesn't go as much, it's not as like character motivated. He doesn't go into very much depth about their thoughts and feelings and their backgrounds. But we do get a lot of plot and action. It almost feels like the writing style almost feels older to me, because it was kind of a common way of writing at one point in time, to just be like, this is what happened, and then this happened, and this is what they did, and then all of that. And it, like, there's a style of writing that's introspective, and there's a style of writing that's very like, we don't know what's happening in their heads at any point. So I feel like we didn't get a whole lot of thoughts happening in the characters' heads at all. Overall, I enjoyed it. I think for people who enjoy fantasy and mystery and like historical fiction, there's something in this book for everybody. It's like historical fiction, but if there was magic. And it was a really interesting plot choice. It's a really, really interesting concept, and I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't think that I would actually get to the Hunger Games in January, but today I looked at it, and then I was like, you know what? There's a week left in the month. I'm gonna finish it. I'm just gonna finish it. So I'm on page 130. I've just finished part 1. It's interesting because everybody has read this book. Everybody ever has already read the whole series. It's like one of those books you read in middle school, and it just like sticks with you. It's good. Like, it definitely Like, you can tell it was made for, you know, young teenagers. But it's also one of those books where, like, reading it when you're older, it doesn't feel childish. Because while the style of writing is, it's not super advanced, the topics that it covers are just, like, they're particularly real at the moment. And they're just something that everybody can understand regardless of age. I'm having a good time. PETA is interesting to me. He's a fun little character. I love Katniss's inner monologue. She just talks. The whole time she's like, what's his angle? He's saying all these nice things to me. He probably wants to kill me. I read like 100 pages just now. I don't know how much I'll get done. I have another 5 days to finish it before the month is over. So I'm hoping to do some reading while I'm at work and after classes. I don't have a lot of time. I'm on page 244 of The Hunger Games. I just finished part 2. I definitely think I'll finish this tomorrow. So that'll be 3 total days, which is great for me. It's pretty good. Like, it's not one of my like all-time favorite books, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I'll probably finish the series. I'm having a good time. I finished reading The Hunger Games yesterday. I did it. I read 3 books in a month, which is like not a lot for most people, but for me it's a lot. I don't think I've ever read 3 books in 1 month. I know it's like super popular. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was good. It's not like one of my like favorite books of all time. And honestly, I finished it and then I didn't really feel any incentive to read the rest of the series. I probably will. It's just not like an immediate need. I felt like it kind of wrapped it up nice. It was like open-ended enough to where you could continue and it would still work, but also you could just stop here and be fine. I guess given that it's been around for so long, I had some expectations. I'm on the internet, so I expected it to be more like The Handmaid's Tale in terms of like how much it would upset me, but it was more like Divergent in the how much it would upset me, which is fine. I did, after thinking about it, I thought about, I wonder if that was intentional. It is made for a younger audience, but I had the thought, I wonder if it's written on purpose that the violence feels so like normal and like fine, so that when you think about it, you're like, wow, this is how the people feel, because the people are so used to it. It's just normal, so it's not even that upsetting to them anymore. And so when you read it and you're not upset by it and it just feels normal, then you're like, wow, what's wrong with me? This is horrible. Or maybe I'm just desensitized to violence. It wasn't described very gruesomely, in my opinion. I mean, I didn't feel any like visceral like disgust like I expected until the very end with the mutations. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've read it. Then I was like, wow, that's really, really like horrific. And knowing that they're being watched and that everybody can like see all this happening, I definitely can see where the next books pick up if you want to see her like take down the government, because I'm assuming that's where this goes next. In the next book she like gets pushed, and then in the third book she like takes down the government or whatever. That's what I'm assuming is going to happen. So if you're like into that, then you would continue on, but you can also just stop here and be happy with that's the story of the Hunger Games, and then it's open-ended. Who knows what she does next? Or maybe that's just me. Overall, I did like it. I liked that the writing style didn't feel too juvenile, even though like it's kind of a middle school book, whether or not it's intended to be a middle school book. I liked that a lot of the topics it covered were still relevant today. It really kind of makes you think, like the way that they're all treated and the way that this is just so normal for them and they expect it and they have to work around it or risk the government coming down on them. And the way that like you can't even like beat their game without consequences for outsmarting them. It's definitely a book that everybody should read in their lifetime. It'll probably be considered like a classic at some point in the future, if it's not already. Anyway, that is the end of my January 2025 reading vlog, I guess. I don't think I'll be doing TBR jar for February or for the next few months. I've got a lot going on. I have to read for my other classes, but I will still be making videos on other topics, and I will still be reading just on my own time without like a time crunch. I'll try to read 3 books every month, but I'll probably just do like recaps of what books I've read so far in the future every now and then. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Leave a comment with something you'd like to see. It's like a type of book that I could talk about or a topic that I should cover. And subscribe to see future videos like this one, or check out my channel to see the videos I've already done, and I'll see you in another one.